Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison are here to use DynastyLeagueFootball.com, the trade analyzer, the trade finder, and all the other stuff that's just so awesome that if you're not using it, you should be using it. And we asked for some of your trades to talk about. And you know what? You gave us some trades to talk about, so thank you.
Indeed. These are pretty good ones. I definitely pondered a good amount of time on some of these trades beforehand, so I'm interested to see your thoughts on these.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I know we use real trades because that's what the trade finder is. It is real trades that happen, but it has a new level when we know it's yours. Like, we quasi know the people that made these trades. We know they happened in the real world that we exist in, not some magical MFL lands that we don't know.
Yep. In legitimate dynasty leagues as well.
Yeah.
Some of those leagues on the trade finder, you guys are playing in legitimate leagues, so
there you go. Or at least you're giving us the details of the leagues.
That's it.
All right, so let's jump in. The first one we have is from Trey Hayes. 12-team Superflex, start 11, 2-point PPR for tight end receptions.
That's big.
It's going to be a good class for that. So the trade we have is the 103, 107, and Bryce Young for the 101, Bucky Irving, and the 26 second. Wow, you're right. He was right before we started. He's like, I was staring at this first trade forever, trying to really piece it together. And I'm like, wow, yeah, you're right. Okay, so the 103 is worth 457. The 107 worth 362. Bryce Young 197 for a total of 1017. The 101 worth 635. Bucky Irving 276. A 26 second worth 77 for a total of 987. So we're in a year where even if quarterbacks go 1 and 2 in the NFL draft, I don't think they're going 1 and 2 in the rookie drafts.
Definitely not 1. 2, 3 could be in consideration depending on the landing spot for like Tet and the other.
That's really
running backs.
Yeah, unless someone else goes like ridiculously early, it's really just Gene T and Tet.
Right.
So here's my thing. If you told Bryce Young is good. Bryce Young had a weird start to his career, but he also, after his bye week last year, was averaging 20 points per game. So he was coming in as a very solid mid to high QB2.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think I like Bryce Young more than the quarterbacks. That was a good word. Than the quarterbacks that are coming in this season. So, I mean, if you're telling me Bryce Young is worth the 102, 103, I think I'm on board with that. So if you want to do Bryce Young in the 107 for the 101, I'd get in on that conversation.
It is really windy over here. I don't know if you can hear it, but holy crap.
Which is funny because it's pretty windy here. It's just not making any noise.
Oh, dude, it is freaking. I just feel like I'm in the middle of a tsunami right now. Anyway.
Yeah, so if we're talking Bryce Young in the 107, we are talking about 570 points to 635. So it's a little light, but still, I think it's a start of a conversation. In which case, I'd rather have the 103 over Bucky Irving in a 26 second. So I think I'm pretty easily taking the picks in Bryce Young's side.
Yeah, that is ultimately the side that I landed on. I had to really stare at this because I was like, the 101 is the best asset in the whole entire deal.
Yes.
And I really like Bucky Irving as well. I like having the known of Bucky Irving. I know that the analyzer says that the 107 is worth more than Bucky, but I would probably rather have Bucky than the 1.07. I don't think this running back class is really good, but I don't know if you're taking a running back better than Bucky at this point.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of I was like, I'm taking Bucky over the 107, but then Bryce in the 103 for the 1.01. I think I have to take the picks there. The 26 second is nice, but I don't really think it adds much in the overallness of this deal.
Yeah, like that would have to be if you thought Bucky was the 108, so you had the 26 second to move it up to the 107, right? Like that's what the 26 second does in this deal. It moves you a little bit in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. Like I think this is, the analyzer has this within 30 points. I do think it is close, but I think you have a better shot of replacing Bucky at 107 than you do replacing a quarterback at the 101. And not saying you have to, but with a quarterback on one side and not the other, it's...
But Ashton Genty's on one side and not the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have two quarterbacks on one side if you assume that the 1.03 is going to be another quarterback. Then you have two quarterbacks on one side compared to Genty and Bucky, plus the maybe running back or wide receiver that you get on one. Or maybe, it's two PPR tight end premium. Maybe that's a tight end.
Yeah, that's like I was saying, that this is a good tight end class. There's going to be, I think I've seen 2 to 3 first round tight ends, or
probably
first into early second.
Arroyo is looking really good at the Senior Bowl, from what I've heard.
I saw some tweets about him showing out.
Yeah, we have at least 3 potentially elite guys, maybe even 4 if you extend it out a little bit to like really good to elite guys.
You gonna get a Warren jersey for behind you?
I might. We'll have to see. I can fit a third one over there for sure. Yeah, I think I'm still leaning towards the 103, 107 side. He did note that Bryce Young is his QB4, so he has some surplus there to where maybe he could take advantage of that. But okay. I still, that leads back to where you and I talk about, just because you have the surplus doesn't mean that you should be the one taking the discount on that player just to satisfy something else.
But again, like I don't think it's the biggest discount. That context does help a little bit. That would make me constantly, I say, do as I say, not as I do, because, I would be in this situation to be like, if it's close enough and I don't need Bryce Young and I don't think it's egregiously making their team much better than my team is being made better in this trade, I think I would do it anyway. So if I don't need Bryce Young, it makes me like the other side a little bit more. Man, I just wish that if that 26 second was a player, I would probably like it more. If that was like a player that was worth 100, 115 points, like some young guy that has some upside to it.
I was going to say, even if it's just like a 27 first, like.
Oh, well, yeah, any sort of one would make it that much better.
Yeah. But yeah, a player in that range, I don't know if it's depending on your team's direction, if you're competing or rebuilding, but a player in that range could be, I think, a little bit more interesting than just a random second.
All right, next trade is from Michael Quensel, 12-team Superflex. Saquon Barkley and the 5'11" for Christian McCaffrey, the 110, and Cooper Kupp. Saquon Barkley, 475, the 5'11", 1.9, for a total of 477. McCaffrey, 376, the 110, 273, and Cooper Kupp, 186 for a total of 835. So you are greatly overpaying in a 3-for-1 for... Do you know when this was done? Like, was this in season? Like, was this before the season was over, the fantasy season was over? Because
I think he just did this. If I'm reading this correctly, I think he took this team over as an orphan this year, like just in the past few weeks.
Gotcha.
So he's selling Saquon.
You're getting your value out of it. I don't necessarily like the players you got out of it. There's risk in McCaffrey. The 110 is, and Cooper Kupp had like a 4% target share out of his last 3 games. Like, so, I mean, I'm just very worried about the players you got. If let's pretend right now we found out Christian McCaffrey is completely healthy and he's going to come back next season, this trade already feels immensely better for you.
Yeah.
Value-wise, I do think you knocked it out. Like, I think you got Saquon Barkley. You got value for Saquon Barkley. Like, you did. Again, if you're willing to take on that risk that Christian McCaffrey is going to be okay.
That's essentially what this hinges on. Is if you told me that CMC was 100% healthy, and if that's the case, the production between him and Saquon should be negligible. It's also entirely possible that because of CMC's receiving upside, that Saquon rushed for 2,000 yards, but he didn't have CMC's averaged 30 fantasy points per game in a season before, or like over 25 points per game in a season before, and was nowhere near 2,000 rushing yards. That's just the straight receiving upside that he had. That Saquon, was not really heavily utilized as a pass catcher this year. I don't think that's his fault. He was fantastic on the ground, but
he can be part of the passing game. There just isn't much of a passing game to the receivers in Philadelphia.
Yes. And when he's closing out drives by rushing for 60-yard touchdowns,
when you're scoring a touchdown on the first play, there's not much you really can ask for.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the difference between CMC and Saquon Barkley, assuming that both of them are fully 100% healthy and they're both the players that we know them to be in 2025, the production is going to be negligible, which is basically all you can really ask for from 27 and 28-year-old running backs at this point. You're not investing into them for the value that they could offer long-term and the value rise that you could get over the next couple of years as well. So if that's the case, the 110 and Cooper Kupp, I think, are just gravy on top of this. The 110 especially could be, if you draft that right in a super flex league, could be a pretty valuable player. And then Cooper Kupp, I don't really know what to do with right now. There's no way he's worth 186 points in the analyzer. That's insane. But I'm really just looking at it from the CMC and the 110 perspective, with Kupp just being a whatever piece.
Yeah.
To see if he can do something. I've been calling him, especially if he leaves the Rams, I've been calling him potentially like this year's 2023 Adam Thielen, of like where maybe he can find somewhere and kind of like be just a top target hog again.
Yes.
Not really have much touchdown upside, but receiving upside for PPR. We'll see. But CMC in the 110, I think, is a very good value for Saquon Barkley right now.
Yeah, and it's not often you trade a stud away and people are like, oh, yeah, no, I think you did good on that. Usually you don't feel good about trading studs away, but there's a very good chance you did good on this. But I also, the other way around, because, it's worth talking in both directions. If I'm scared, are you scared of Saquon Barkley next year because of all the touches he had, all the yards he ran for?
I'm not scared from like that point of view. There is going to be some regression. You don't just rush for 2,000 yards and then do it again. So, he's not going to rush for 2,000 yards again next year. And maybe that's made up for by having more receiving ability from a fantasy standpoint. That could cancel each other out for 2025. I don't know if the touchdowns are going to be there again, although granted he lost like 14 touchdowns that hurts again.
So maybe they finally make the tush push illegal so we don't have to deal with that anymore. So they have to rush for more touchdowns.
Maybe he'll break Sean Alexander's record next year, instead of Dickerson's this year. But I do think that Saquon is at a place in dynasty value right now where I would be looking to sell off of him just because of his age. He has had an injury history since 2020. The production is probably not going to be as good next year as it was this year, just from a pure regression standpoint. If you can get good value from him, I think he's a good sell high right now.
Okay. And I think they sort of did that.
Agreed.
Of course, our huge bias is we prefer wide receivers over running backs, and that would probably change everything if it was a 400-point wide receiver instead of Christian McCaffrey. But
100%.
All right, so let's move on to the next one from just Dynasty FF. Very short, straight to the point. Dynasty Fantasy Football, like it. 10-team Superflex, start 10. 0.5 PPR and then a 0.5 tight end premium. We have the 101, another 101 trade. 101 and Brian Robinson for Jonathan Taylor, Sam Laporta, and a 27 second. The 101, 635, B-Rob at 153 for a total of 788. JT 408, Laporta 387, 27 second 51 for a total of 846. I think I want Taylor and Laporta here. I don't know. Again, my bias to moving off of high priced assets for running backs is but I still believe in Jonathan Taylor. He's 26. He still has another year or two before we consider him completely dead. Jonathan, he was a little up and down, but he still had his ups. He still, I think he had a good season overall.
Do you know he was fourth in the NFL in rushing yards?
That's weird.
He had his best statistical season since 2021 this past year.
That's so weird because it did not feel like it.
It was very, very good. But yes, I agree. It did not feel like it at points.
Fantasy-wise, it did not feel like it, that's for sure. As someone who had JT in SFB. Sam Laporta, I firmly believe in. And when you're talking getting twice the amount of points per reception from your tight end, that's a pretty decent bump. So I do believe that Laporta, again, saying a bounce back year isn't necessarily fair because he didn't have a bad year. And especially towards the end of the year, he started getting those targets back.
Yes. And the touchdowns.
Well, he's no Trey McBride, but you know.
But yes, he lived off of the targets and the touchdowns tremendously in 2023 and then second half of 2024.
Yeah. So, I mean, this pretty much to me burns down to JT and Laporta for the 101 and Brian Robinson for a 27 second. And I think I would take the players here.
I want Ashton Genty. I don't think the tight end premium is enough for me to really like value Sam Laporta as a premium kind of piece in here. And he did drop his whole entire roster into his comment as well. And he already has Trey McBride. So and like when you look at the rest of his roster,
see again, 0.5. How much is he starting? He's starting 10. So yeah, I have no issue when you're in a league where your tight ends are getting twice the amount of points per reception than every other player. I'm absolutely good flexing one of them because you have 2 top 5 tight ends.
See, you're saying it's twice the amount, which mathematically, yes, it is, but it like the difference is only a half of a point, which is the same difference as going from 1 PPR to 1.5 tight end premium, which you and I both know is not much of a premium. And it's not the same as a 1 PPR compared to a 2 PPR tight end premium. That is also double the points, but the delta is much greater in terms of the difference. I'm just saying, like, I if you already have Trey McBride and you look at the other wide receivers that he has CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra, McLaurin, and DJ Moore. He has Gibbs, Walker, Pollard, and B-Rob. He's going to draft Ashton Genty with the 101. Quarterbacks are Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. And Kyler when he feels like throwing Kyler in there. So, like, so
do whatever you want, man. You're good.
I mean, there really is no wrong answer when you have a lineup like that. But like, I think when you're looking at it in terms of what you can do to optimize this roster, I don't know if adding another tight end that you may or may not even flex because your other positions are so good. I feel like I'd rather just go for the shot of Ashton Genty. And if he ends up being, in that Bijan Robinson or that Saquon Barkley or that Zeke Elliott class, like immediately, which he is as a prospect. And if he enters that echelon as an NFL player, I think that makes a bigger difference to his roster than Sam Laporta with an extra half a point of PPR.
I feel like this is the conversation from the first trade where there was decreased value because of what they are to their roster.
That is also fair.
Like, I wish you didn't have to give up Jonathan Taylor and Sam Laporta to get the 101. Like, man, I wish that was Kenneth Walker and Sam Laporta.
Oh, he already has the 101. He'd be trading away the 101 for JT and Laporta.
Oh, so he traded away the 101 and got JT and Laporta.
It was a trade offer. He asked what our thoughts were on the offer.
I would take JT and Laporta.
I would keep the 101 and be Rob.
Oh, wait. So he has a ridiculous team and someone's trying to break down the 101 to players that he might not even be putting in his lineup. Never mind. Keep the 101. Because that absolutely matters unless you have a league that is active enough where you think you can then turn like two other players into something better than Ashton Jinty. Like that. Okay. I'm sorry. I had all of this reversed in my head, and that's why I was thinking about it wrong. Yeah. Value is value, and that is very important, but it also depends on your league. If you have a league that doesn't trade very often, doing this trade to break down the 101 into smaller pieces that you don't need is dangerous because you're going to be sitting there on game day. Of course, we don't have games for another 7+ months, but with Sam Laporta on your bench, and what's the point of that when you could have had Ashton Jinty at that point? But if you're in a kind of league where you think that there's someone in your league that has Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, like on the block, and you think you can send two players to go upgrade somewhere else with these players, if you have that situation, then I would do it for the fun of it. But from the standpoint of I don't know your league and what your situation is, makes me feel the need to be a little bit more conservative, in which case I'm going to say stick with the 101. Next is Andrew Carlson, 12-team, 1 QB, start 8 PPR. Our trade is Josh Jacobs in the 203 for Rome Odunze and the 303. Josh Jacobs in at 349.8, the 203, 169 for a total of 519. Rome Odunze, 569, the 303, 71 for a total of 640. I get points versus non-points, but I really just want Rome Odunze here. I know that Josh Jacobs had a really good season. He's only 26. I'm not worried about him in age whatsoever. I'm not worried about him in the offense. I still think that's his backfield. But I also think Rome Odunze is going to do a lot better with a Ben Johnson-led Bears.
Anything's better than the Shane Waldron / interim OC-led Bears. Yes. This trade was done, I believe, post Ben Johnson news as well. He said that he traded it, and then he is a believer in Rome and Ben Johnson. So that's the side that he got.
Yeah.
So I believe this was done to buy Rome Odunze for the Ben Johnson offense.
Yeah, and I think you got a pretty good deal. I mean, I love when a trade is from the pick is from the same team on both sides, so it is 12 or 10, 12 spots in between. Mm-hmm. Like there's no messing around. You know exactly how different those are. But that drop from 203 is a pretty decent pick, but not enough to make me move off of how good of a prospect was Rome Odunze. Like people were so high on him, and you're starting 8. Which means that starting 8 pushes me towards the running back a little bit, but I think I believe enough in Odunze that I think he's going to be a player you'll be starting.
As a prospect, he would definitely vie for the wide receiver 1 overall in this rookie class.
Exactly. So I'd be willing to drop down that round to go get Rome Odunze. And again, a lot of this, like it's fun to me because you have the declining asset of a 26-year-old running back on his second contract versus a really good wide receiver prospect who had a really weird rookie year because of the situation his team was going through. Mm-hmm. And starting 8 puts a whole new twist into it because, man, if Odunze doesn't hit, you kind of have a dead asset if he turns into a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, he kind of does. Like if he was like Jayden Reed and you're like, ooh, maybe, but also maybe not,
Yeah.
That just, yeah. But if he hits, for sure, this trade would look great.
There's a very good chance by the time you figure out if Rome Odunze hit, Josh Jacobs isn't worth anything anymore. So
that is awesome. There is that too. Yeah. Yeah, I love these kind of deals too, because I think this is what makes Dynasty fun. It's one of those ways that, you, like you said, you can get off a declining asset for an ascending asset. And, it might feel like you're taking a production hit now, but by mid-September or mid-October to November, there could be no difference in production between these two. If Odunze's doing that well in a Ben Johnson offense. And now all of a sudden you have a 22-year-old, maybe 23-year-old wide receiver averaging 16 PPR points per game compared to a 26, maybe 27-year-old wide or running back averaging 16 points per game. Like everybody in Dynasty knows which ones they'd rather have.
Yep.
And it's Rome Odunze.
Yeah. There you go. All right. The next trade, Eli, the fantasy guy, 12-team Superflex start 11 PPR best ball. Drake Maye straight up for Brian Thomas Jr. Oof. Drake Maye 518.5, BTJ 703.9.
I'm shocked at multiple things in this analyzer screenshot. One, Drake Maye is only 518 points. Two, BTJ is over 700. That feels wild. Both of their values.
What, the wide receiver 7 or 8 at this point?
I think so. But still, like I feel, you know how we didn't even get, weren't we talking about Nico Collins like a couple weeks ago or whatever? And he was like at like 570. And I'm like, there is no reason he should be at least not in the 600s. If not, I was even arguing, I think, for him in the 700s at that point.
I mean, Nico Collins is still at 577.
That is stupid.
ADP has Nico, then Brian Thomas Jr. But clearly ADP doesn't equal trade value, as we see.
It has to be, our rankers need to update their Nico Collins rankings.
That could also be what it is.
Well, that's what's holding Drake Maye down. I mean, you look at his thing, it's ADP is 15 overall, which is ahead of BTJ, but his rank is 43, which is BTJ's at 15. So that's a 30-point gap in overall rank in Superflex.
I mean, what this comes down to is I think BTJ is more of a game changer at wide receiver than Drake Maye is at quarterback. I think Drake Maye will be a great QB in a best ball situation, a great QB3/QB2. So, man, give me Brian Thomas Jr., who I think can really be a difference maker. Could you get more? Do you think you can get more than Drake Maye for Brian Thomas Jr.? I think so. I guess it depends what you think more is. Like, is Tua worth more than Drake Maye?
No. For a lot of people, Drake Maye is a top 10 dynasty quarterback.
Yeah, Tua's only 350.
I think on Keep Trade cut, Drake Maye is like the QB 8 or something.
That's too high.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like it's like I would have a hard time figuring this one out. If this was a startup draft, I don't know which one I would pick. Because if Drake Maye hits that ceiling of being like not even like a Joe Burrow, but like it's just like a Justin Herbert kind of perennial 4,500 and upwards of closer to 30, which I guess that's also kind of Joe Burrow minus this season was insane. But plus the rushing upside that he offers too, like if he hits that, I would rather have a top 8 quarterback than a top 5 or 6, let alone 8 wide receiver.
Yeah, but if we're talking about Maye hitting his ceiling, we could talk about Brian Thomas Jr. hitting his ceiling. And that could be wide receiver 3.
Yeah, it could be. I think his ceiling is like CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Essentially. But I think Drake Maye, I mean, I would take Joe Burrow over CeeDee Lamb right now. Right?
Yes.
So
at their ceilings, we're saying Drake Maye over Brian Thomas Jr. But right now, I say Brian Thomas Jr. over Drake Maye.
I think I can agree with that. It just starts to get to it's so hard because I love both these players. I love investing into both of them because of the positions that they're in. Like this would be so easy. If this was like Bijan versus Drake Maye, I'd be like, dude, just give me Drake Maye.
Just give me Drake Maye. Yeah.
The fact that it is Brian Thomas Jr., it is difficult. I don't know if there is necessarily a wrong answer.
Trying to look at players. There's not a lot of skill players around. So there's a lot of quarterbacks. Puka or Jahmyr Gibbs. Even though that's already, there's a bit of a gap in between Brian Thomas Jr., Puka, and Jahmyr Gibbs. But there's Bijan. So Drake Maye or Puka?
I would take Puka there. I would take Puka over BTJ.
Yes. I'm going up in the values.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I would take Puka over Maye.
Malik Neighbors.
Yes.
And then Bijan.
I would take Maye over Bijan.
And then we hit St. Brown and Brock Bowers and CD Lamb. So that's already a little too high.
But like, if you were in a startup right now and you're sitting here, you're at like the 2.03 and you have these two options. You're staring down the barrel of both these guys. Are you taking BTJ?
Can I just trade back and let someone else make a decision for me? I don't like making choices. Come on, man. This is why I don't like startups. I'd probably take the quarterback just because it's a quarterback. In a startup, it's a young quarterback. But it's really funny. Someone pointed out to me how many times we said the name Brian Thomas Jr. when we talked about it. And now it's all that's in my head. It's like, say it again. Say the name again.
Yeah. Would you take Brian Thomas Jr. over Drake Maye or would you take Drake Maye over Brian Thomas Jr.? Because if you're taking Brian Thomas Jr., then I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a really good pick.
Right. If you're talking about Brian Thomas Jr., you need to talk about Brian Thomas Jr. And if you're talking about Drake Maye right now, you need to talk about Brian Thomas Jr.
I think we analyzed that pretty well.
I think we did. Like you said, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think they'll both be happy with the players they got. I think they'll both be good. I don't think either of them are going to bust from here. So like what Drake Maye was able to do with nothing, that if they just bring in someone, and what Brian Thomas Jr. was able to do in a meh offense. Oh my God.
Now gets Liam Cohen.
And his Duval. Work on that, buddy. Work on that.
But I will say, I saw a clip right after that when he was meeting a bunch of players. Like he met Trevor and he met like Christian Kirk. And then the last person he went up to, he dapped up BTJ and he said, "I'm so excited for you, man." And I was like, yes, you should be.
And now
Mike Evans 2.0.
All you got to work on, Liam Cohen, is leaning back, hands cupping the mouth. Duval. You got to work on that, man. You can't be the coach and throw out that Duval. And I know you were nervous. You're up there in your suit, but like,
That's all right. That'll be a clip that we will look back on in a few years whenever he's like coach of the year candidate. And we'll be like the biting knees thing, from Dan Campbell.
I really hope they make the playoffs next season. And on the Jumbotron, they play that Duval. And like he really went. Really got into it. I love it. Just got to work on it a little bit. All right, next trade. Moving on from Yam Baggy, 12-team, 1 quarterback, a 26 first, and the 308 for Brandon Ayuk. Notes: won the championship in 2024 and looking to repeat in 25, so it should be a late 26. I'll play that game. If you won and your team isn't full of senior citizens,
his wide receiver core, I don't know what the rest of his team is, but his wide receivers are Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, Jacoby Myers. Yeah,
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I feel like it's at least a late 26 first, then hopefully it's the 26-112.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Well, let's do the numbers. 26 first is 264. The 308 is 53 for a total of 317. Brandon Ayuk still up at 437.
That's wild.
That's a little too high. I think he should be down in that 250 area at this point. Mm-hmm. In which case, I guess I feel like this is fair. Do I want to give up a first? No. Would I give up a 26 first if I believe in Brandon Ayuk from my championship team? Yeah, I think so. On the other hand, I love getting a first for Brandon Ayuk, even if it is a year out.
I think that's a perfect way to look at it. I am still treating this in a super flex standpoint. Like this is a 1 quarterback league, so that devalues the first a little bit. I literally had the exact same breakdown that you had in my head when I was putting this in here of like, I don't want to pay a first for Ayuk right now. I feel like selling Ayuk for a first seems like a pretty positive move right now. And then, if I wanted to buy Ayuk after he has like a good game in September, he looks healthy. I feel like I wouldn't have to pay much more than a first anyway. Even after I've already seen him back on the field for a little bit. But then I was like, but then it's a 1 quarterback first.
Yeah.
And if it's the 112 in the 1 quarterback league,
then it's pretty much not a first anyway. Sorry, 1 quarterback. Then it's, you're right. That does change things a little bit. So it does seem like pretty fair off balance, just because, again, Ayuk being at 436.8 is just way too high.
Yes, I do agree with that. I do think Ayuk is a good buy low right now, but like I said, I just don't know. I don't know if now's the time I would use a future first for Brandon Ayuk. You just saw the last.
I just scrolled down. I was so bored.
I got the email and I was like, Russ has just been clicking buttons all afternoon, bro.
It was a Tuesday. I needed some trades, and I don't know what I was thinking. It's one of those. Every once in a while, I'll send a trade offer, and I completely forget about it, and then I get the rejection, and I look to see what it was because I like to see if people leave comments, and then I'm like, "Why did I send that? That's not a good offer."
That wasn't. I was not leaving you a comment on that one, buddy.
that was where no question mark.
I almost left you a comment saying that I think you forgot to hit another button on your side.
And the thing is, I hope I did, because I sent in the 12-team Superflex tight end premium league, I sent Kyler Murray for Justin Herbert and Jalen Waddle. Oh, this was probably too. Oh man, I crossed ideas because I was trying to get Jalen Waddle, and then I'm like, wait, he likes Kyler Murray, and then I just didn't finish the thought.
Just boom, 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 send, done.
Thankfully, it was really bad in your, so it wasn't something you snap accepted, and I felt like an idiot because I didn't click the right amount of buttons. So I sent Kyler Murray for Justin Herbert and Jalen Waddle, which is Kyler Murray 659.6, Justin Herbert 659.8 in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then adding in Jalen Waddle's 347.5 all. So that is a Jalen Waddle off.
That's what I was like. I looked at this trade offer and I was like, buddy, you're missing like a Jalen Waddle on your side. I was like, number one, because I did put it in the analyzer too. I was like, does the analyzer say that this could be fair? Is he trying to trick me on this one? But the analyzer said that. I was like, so Russ didn't use the trade analyzer before he hit this, before he hit send. And he also didn't watch my quarterback rankings video from like a week and a half ago when I had Herbert ranked ahead of Kyler Murray. It was like 2 spots, but I was like, Herbert was ahead of Kyler, or at least right there, where I was like, you are a Jalen Waddle off on this trade.
Yeah, that was my bad on that one.
That was just so funny. I mean, it's so easy to do, especially on MFL when you're just following check boxes. That's the one thing I think I hate about MFL for setting lineups and trades. When you got check boxes, and you're like, I don't even remember which boxes I even checked now.
Oh, I see. That doesn't bother me. It's not too often do I. If I'm going to mess it up on MFL, I'm messing it up everywhere. It's my lack of paying attention. It has nothing to do. Like, to me, has nothing to do with the system. I'm just used to check boxes at this point. I love me some MFL, so I'm never going to talk bad about it. But that's the end of the show sheet, because where do you go from that trade?
It's all right to send bad offers. Worst they could do is just say no and then laugh at you later.
And if you're good enough, they laugh at you with you about it.
The funny part too, you didn't even read what the segment was called.
Oh,
usually it's
it is Russ's dumb trade offers. That's right. I saw it and just started laughing, and I didn't read it out loud. Yeah, Russ's dumb trade offers. That is absolutely can be a segment every single week.
In Russ's inbox, Russ's dumb trade offers. There it is.
Oh, fantastic. But this has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher, Dynasty FF, Addison Hayes at Macy's _. We'll catch you next time.